you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be your first interviewee. My name is Marni von Wilpert. I am the San Diego City Council member for District 5. I am running for re-election in 2024. I've been in San Diego pretty much my whole life. I grew up in Scripps Ranch. I was actually born in Denver, Colorado. But we moved to Scripps Ranch when I was 4 years old. So I did preschool here. I went to Miramar Ranch Elementary School, Wagenheim Middle School, and then Scripps Ranch High School. I graduated in 2001. My parents still live in the house I grew up in Scripps Ranch, and I now live down the street. Got two younger brothers and a nephew, and lovely to be home in my hometown.
So yeah, talking about like you moving from Denver to San Diego, like what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, well, I grew up here in San Diego, and so I got to learn how to swim in the Pacific Ocean, and I learned how to ride my bike at Lake Miramar, which is in Scripps Ranch, where I grew up. And it's been incredible growing up in San Diego and to be in a binational region with the Baja Tijuana border. Grew up with incredible culture and Mexican food and learning about different cultures in our country. And it's been a great upbringing. I've been very lucky. I went to excellent public schools, including Scripps Ranch High School. I went to a public school for college as well. I went to UC Berkeley, at University of California. So I've been very, very pleased and honored and very privileged to grow up in a beautiful place like San Diego.
So when you're like in your high school era or like your college era, why did you decide to do something related to politics?
Thank you for the question. I actually have been in public service my entire career. Even in high school at Scripps Ranch High, I earned my Gold Award with the Girl Scouts as a senior in high school, which is equivalent to Eagle Scout for the Boy Scouts. After college, I served in the United States Peace Corps. I was deployed by President Bush II in the middle of the AIDS crisis in Africa. So I left in 2006. I was deployed to Botswana in sub-Saharan Africa. We're trying to help children who are born with HIV whose parents had died of AIDS in the AIDS crisis. Then I came back to the United States. I went to law school in New York City at Fordham Law School. A native San Diegan, did not know how to deal with those New York winters. I can tell you I was freezing. But then I continued serving, and I worked in enforcement litigation for years, once for the federal government and law enforcement for workers' rights around the country at the National Labor Relations Board. A lot of what I did was help women who found out they weren't paid the same as men, and they would speak up and ask for a raise, and a lot of them would get fired just for speaking up and asking for equal pay, and I'd go in and help get their jobs back. So I've been in public service my whole career, and I moved back home to San Diego, and I became a deputy city attorney, and I worked for the city attorney's office for a couple of years. And then I decided to run for office because I really wanted to continue helping my community. And I could help as a deputy city attorney, working with law enforcement. Each case that came across my desk, I realized I wanted to be able to go out into the community and ask people what they need and go back to City Hall and write laws and not just wait for a case to come across my desk. So that's why I ran for office, to serve my hometown. It's been a true honor to be here.
Okay, honing in on like the upcoming 2024 election, could you tell me like what makes you a standout candidate? Like why should people vote for you?
Yes. Well, I would be honored to earn re-election here in District 5 in San Diego. This will be my second race. I ran for office the very first time in 2020, and I got elected in the middle of a pandemic. It was quite a time to campaign on Zoom and Facebook and all the things. So I love to earn people's support. I think some of my major accomplishments, the first one is the first law that I passed when I got elected, and it was in April of 2021. I had been in office all of 4 months, and we heard, sadly, sirens downtown and gunshots downtown here at City Hall. There was a mass shooting in the Gaslamp district in April of 2021, and a young man who was a valet driver was shot and killed. The shooter then turned around and sprayed bullets into a crowd of tourists, and he shot one Scripps Ranch resident who just happened to be downtown going to a restaurant. So the shooter was tackled and arrested, and when I got the briefings on the issue, I saw that the shooter had used a ghost gun. And I called the police chief and I said, "Sir, what is a ghost gun?" And he said, "Marni, They're illegal weapons. People often buy the parts to make them at home. They assemble the gun at home, and we call them ghost guns because they don't put a serial number on them. So they're not registered. And when we find them at a crime scene, they're untraceable. They disappear in the system like a ghost. And so I said, well, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen ever again in San Diego. And so I wrote the first law in the state of California to ban illegal ghost guns and the unregulated parts people were buying to make them at home. It's called the Enough Ordinance. Like, we've had enough. It's the Eliminate Non-Traceable Unserialized Firearms Ordinance. And it requires that if anyone's going to sell the parts to make weapons in San Diego, including the unfinished blowers, frames, receivers, the slide, the trigger block, each part needs to have a registration number or a serial number on it, so that to buy the parts of weapons is treated just like a normal weapon, and you have to pass a background check, got to make sure there's no domestic violence restraining order against you if you're trying to harm your partner, make sure there's no ideas of suicide, make sure you can safely own the weapon before you purchase it. That was the whole driving force behind the law, and we passed it, and other cities throughout California have now passed it, and a first conviction that our city attorney got a year ago. We did a whole press conference about it because ghost guns are usually used in crimes, and we really need to get them off their streets. So that's one reason I'd love to earn people's support. And the second is we're really trying to push for the basics of government, including fixing our roads, making sure our parks are green, renewing our libraries. We finally have Sunday hours and for libraries open again. We've got historic funding in roads, over $104 million for road repair alone in this budget. But trying to make sure that the city services are working for the people.
Yeah. So looking at San Diego, I was wondering, how are you as a city council member going to tackle like the housing crisis and affordable housing problem, like seeing that these are like huge problems plaguing our city?
Yes, that's a great question. Here in the city of San Diego, we, as a council, since I've been elected in 2020, have approved every affordable housing project that's come forward, every market rate housing project that's come forward. We're trying to build more housing in locations that make sense as fast as we can, because we know we have a housing crunch. I do believe we have to bring the infrastructure with it, and that just building in areas that are high fire zones is not a good idea. Building in areas where there's very little transit, we're going to put more cars on the road, also not a good idea. The issue is we at council can authorize developers to come in with the plans and build the homes. We can't build them ourselves. So sometimes developers, their commercial loans won't come through, or things get tied up and they don't build them as quickly as we'd hoped. But we can authorize all we can. Another issue we're taking on, especially to address homelessness, is repurposing some of the empty or underutilized hotels in the city. So for when the pandemic hit and tourism stopped, a lot of the smaller hotels went out of business. And so now we can use those to actually rehab them and make them housing for individuals who otherwise would have been homeless. And one example in my district, in District 5 in Rancho Bernardo, is the Radisson Inn, which was behind the Rancho Bernardo Library. It closed down during the pandemic, so the city bought it and sold it to an affordable housing developer who's renovating those extended stay rooms, which already have kitchenettes and bathrooms, for senior citizens who are homeless. And it breaks my heart to see a senior citizen on the street. So we're going to bring them in. It's 167 units for low-income housing for seniors and veterans, which we need. And the city is now going to be purchasing 3 more hotels in the Kearny Mesa area, because we need to figure out low-cost housing as fast as we can. But I agree, it's a huge problem, and it's not something we can solve overnight or just as city council alone. But those are the steps we're taking.
Yeah, but according to like a recent Fox 5 San Diego article, like you said, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted 3-1 in favor of applying for a grant and purchasing 3 hotels and 1 apartment complex in San Diego to turn into housing for like the homeless. But like the plan as of now, it would spend about $478,000 per unit, meaning that like it's a higher price for less units than a lot of people accepted or kind of expected. And the article said that like people can be accepted regardless of drug or alcohol use. So honing in on the thing about people being accepted regardless of like drug or alcohol use. So how is this, like bringing in hundreds of alcoholics and drug addicts into one condensed area or like condensed areas, addresses the root cause of the homeless problem, let alone like keeps tax-paying citizens safe or keeps like states off home neighborhood devaluations?
But David, did you ask about a county board of supervisors vote? You said the county board voted for 3-1?
Yeah.
So I don't serve on the county board of supervisors. I serve on the San Diego City Council. And they are also looking and purchasing hotels, but I can't speak to the supervisor's vote. I could speak to the city council.
Okay. Well, now looking at homelessness as a problem, besides like buying hotels and like turning them into like housing for the homelessness, how are you going to tackle the homelessness problem too? Like, do you have any other like goals or like steps?
Yes. So we at the city of San Diego just voted a week ago, last Tuesday, on a resolution prohibiting unauthorized encampments on public lands. So in city parks, in city sidewalks, places in front of businesses. Like, I don't believe we should allow encampments on the streets. It's not safe for anybody. It's not safe for business owners, for residents, or for unsheltered individuals. We're seeing the county medical examiner has put out data every month for the past 5-6 years of unsheltered deaths in our city, of homeless people who are dying. And we are seeing it skyrocket recently because of fentanyl. Fentanyl has been a very deadly drug. It's a synthetic opioid, 50 times more potent than morphine. And it's killing not only unsheltered individuals, but a lot of housed people as well. We're working on it at all levels of government. The U.S. Attorney just did a huge drug bust of fentanyl coming across the border. But if we allow people to just live on the streets, they're going to be dying on the streets. And so I voted to prohibit camping on our streets because it's unsafe for everybody. And we're opening up as a crisis measure a safe camping lot on 20th and B, which is a utility yard the city of San Diego has near downtown. And I went to tour it. It's going to have safe camping sites. So if people aren't ready to come into a large shelter for whatever reason, they can come and stay in a tent where there's security. So drug dealers cannot prey on them and go tent to tent selling fentanyl. There's going to be a nurse from the county who will do wellness checks, put any vaccines needed. Hepatitis A, for example, is starting to come back. We're going to hopefully have actual counselors on site to get people into housing and navigation services. But David, the gap I see is that we are not providing enough on-site substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment at our homeless shelters. We build them, these giant shelters, and then we ask individuals who are struggling with addiction to wake up and go find services somewhere. And they don't have cars. How are they going to get there? And I think it's one thing to provide shelter, which we need to do. I don't want to see anyone die in the street. At the same time, if we're going to focus people somewhere, we need to bring substance abuse and mental health counseling to the site. And I've been pounding on this for a while. That's what we need the county to do. Is the city, we have land, we can do the brick and mortar and build the shelters. The county is in charge of health and human services. They have the mental health counselors and the employees to come, and they have the budget. They get the taxpayer money to do health and human services. We need them to come on site and actually provide substance abuse and mental health counseling on site. So far, we have done this twice. 2022 was the first year we have ever done this as a city and a county. And we call them our harm reduction shelters, and we bring the county employees with substance abuse counseling, with mental health treatment on site. So when someone is at a shelter and is waking up sober, they instantly are able to get connected to this. And that has actually helped us get people off of drugs and stable and get them into permanent housing. We're not doing enough of it. And so that's what I keep advocating the county is please work with us. I know the county doesn't own the land, the city does. But if we build a safe camping site where we're going to have 150 people come, we have people who need services. We need you to bring them. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get everyone on the same page about. So it's probably more than you wanted to hear, but that's very passionate about saving lives and not letting people languish on our streets. So,
yeah. So my last question of the day is, like, what are your goals? Like, what are the goals you're going to strive for once you get elected?
Yeah. So if I do earn reelection, which I'd love to earn, I want to continue the work that we've been doing. One, as I said before, gun violence prevention is a huge priority for me. The Centers for Disease Control has determined that the highest cause of death in the United States of America for children is gun violence. That's not okay. That a child born today has a higher rate of dying at the hands of a gun than of any other cause of death in America. So I want to focus on making sure there's no more school shootings, shootings at places of worship. We had the Poway synagogue shooter not too long ago. Places in workplaces, partners themselves. I have no problem with responsible, lawful gun owners. That's not who keeps me up at night. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about the folks who want to use a gun to commit violence. I want to continue working on that. I also want to continue taking on this fentanyl epidemic. We are seeing people in all walks of life who are dying of fentanyl, and a lot of folks aren't even seeking it. They're trying to get other pills, Adderall or benzos or things. And so I don't want any more families to lose a life to fentanyl. And we're seeing a lot of it in my district too, in Rancho Penasitos, Scripps Ranch, Rancho Bernardo. It doesn't discriminate. So I want to continue working on that to save lives. And I want to continue just fixing the basic things we need for government, making sure our roads are actually repaired, making sure our first responders, our police, our firefighters, our lifeguards have the equipment and personnel they need. We weren't paying our police officers and our firefighters enough to keep them in our city. We kept recruiting them, training them, and then they get a higher job offer at a city next door. I don't want to see us losing police officers anymore. So I want to make sure that we do recruit good folks so that we keep our city safe, because no matter what, if someone calls 911, I want an ambulance or a police or a firefighter on there on time, every time. So these are some of my priorities: public safety, infrastructure, and trying to make sure our city stays safe and clean.
Yeah. Anything else you want to tell me?
Just I want to thank you for being involved in politics. At a younger age, we need young people to stand up and pre-register to vote. I'm a huge fan of the pre-register to vote drive. So when you're 18, are you pre-registered to vote?
Not sure.
Okay, well, you got to check. As soon as you turn 16, you can do it. Yeah, but we need young people involved. So thank you for getting involved.
Yeah.
And we need good journalists. So I just want to say I'm really proud of you. You did a good job today.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Lily.